Hey guys, I have a series of some of the dumbest videos you will ever see. This is my introduction into Sovereign Citizen 101. If you're not familiar with sovereign citizens, well, basically, watch this video. There's going to be several of these videos. This is your introduction to a group of sovereign citizens we like to call the Moors. And basically, everything that this lady is going to say, just assume the opposite is true. And that's going to be generally correct. So, by the way, this is the second time I've recorded this video because the first time I recorded it, I basically commented on everything and made this 15-minute, 10-minute video. Well, there's two sections, two 10-minute sections. I made it into like 2 hours. So, I'm not going to do that. And just so you know, this first part's going to be a recording. The rest of the parts I'm going to do live. I've just been busy lately also. It's hard to find a 2 hour window to do a live stream, as you might not. I'm in a hotel, right? I've been traveling, so let's just get into it. Let's just have fun listening to a whole bunch of bullshit. Okay, here we go. Here we go.
And that in fact this is our land. So beginning with that premise, whether you're more or not more, I'm going to start with what law really is. Most of us think that we go into a courtroom and understand the difference between a court and a courtroom. That
But by the way, this video does have a tag on it, blackhistorychannel.org. That's not where I got this video. I got it from some black hole in the middle of YouTube. And then this lady, her name's printed on the bottom. She goes by Queen V, and this video is from at least 15 years ago. I don't remember the exact date.
the people who purport to use law really use words of art to make you believe, in fact, that law is on the table when you walk into a courthouse or a courtroom, when in fact that's not true. And I would like to share with you tonight, regardless of your religious persuasion, what law really is.
At least she didn't say irregardless.
Law, and as Muslims would say, all law, is A-L-L space L-A-W. All law. All law. So for anyone who's of a Christian persuasion, don't be misled. And when you hear the term all law is God, all right? That is also what we would say in lawful terms, a misnomer. Allah is not God. God has no capacity and no standing to all law. Because God means governmental ordinance departments. There is no comparison. Now, who can use law?
Basically, what she's saying is, what kind of shit can I make up to make this speech?
Law can only be used by people who are in their sovereign capacity. And as I will share with you tonight, the majority of the people in the world, and I'm not going to get into all of the details about that, but the majority of the people in the world, 99% of them live in slavery today. So in 1863, via the Emancipation Proclamation,
Oh no.
and I challenge you to go look in a law dictionary and look up the definition of emancipation and proclamation, and you will see that a proclamation is not a law. A proclamation is a public announcement by elected officials. It is not a law. So the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 did not set any slaves free. What it did was standardized slavery, the United States being the model for the standardization of slavery, that all of the other nations around the world, as they reduced their people from their sovereign capacity and forced them to join nation states.
Okay, what the hell is she talking about? So, the Emancipation Proclamation gave legal status to 3.5 million people, at the time known as slaves, right? Slaves. Freed slaves. Made slaves citizens with not all the rights, most of those rights came over time, but it gave it basically stopped slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation basically ended slavery. Now we know that there was some cultures throughout the country that weren't a big fan of this. But by giving people a social security number and legal status, it didn't make them slaves. It freed them from slavery. So a whole bunch of bullshit is going on in this video, which makes it excellent for YouTube. So anyway.
And that in fact this is our land.
Oh shit! It
So
started
beginning with
over.
that premise, whether you're more or not more, public announcement by elected officials. It is not a law. So the Emancipation
Oh god, I had
Proclamation
it.
did not set any slaves free.
Hang on,
Simply
hang on, hang on.
standardized slavery, the United States
Whatever.
being the model for the standardization of slavery, that all of the other nations around the world, as they reduced their people from their sovereign capacity and forced them to join nation states, then they were able to issue statute, codes, ordinances.
Statute, by definition of law, code, ordinances are enforceable by law, and then the word that she's going to leave out is law. So, was she just, was she basically just saying the Emancipation Proclamation was a bad thing? That we should go back to how it was before that was signed? Just throwing that out there.
Resolutions on them. And a statute, as in a state statute of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, is not a law. It is corporate policy of the corporation that calls itself the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Incorporated. All right? Now, a code is not a law. The United States codes, the code of the laws of the United States of America that are used in federal court and the Supreme Court, are not law. They are what they say they are. They are codes, ordinances, and resolutions of a municipality of the city of Philadelphia, which is a private, nonprofit corporation that calls itself the City of Philadelphia. An ordinance and a resolution, as in parking ordinances, they are not law. They are what they say they are. They are ordinances and they are resolutions. All right? And the reason they are not law is because the only people who can issue law are people who are acting in their sovereign capacity. And the people who sit in these seats as elected officials are not, in fact, in their sovereign capacity. They are in a corporate ward status, meaning that they are wards of the state. They are members of the corporation, which is a nonprofit, that calls itself the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And as long as they have a birth certificate on record with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, with that birth certificate being a contract, a birth certificate is a contract, and as long as you have a contract with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Incorporated, you belong to them, and that's what slavery really is. All right? So who can use law? If you are a member of a corporate ward state, if you
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Birth certificate equals slavery. She might as well not say anything else. She's nailed it.
are a member of a corporate ward nation that calls itself the United States of America, you are a citizen. Look in the law dictionary and look up the definition of citizen. A citizen is not a sovereign. A resident is not a sovereign. Therefore, if you use an address, which is a fictitious number associated with a designation issued by a corporate ward, right? Then you become under the jurisdiction of those people who are also corporate wards, but who are also slaveholders. All right? So if you are operating in that capacity, law does not apply to you. If you are a resident of the city of Philadelphia, which is a private, nonprofit corporation, and you say you are a resident of the city of Philadelphia, then the ordinances and the resolutions of that private, nonprofit
I have never once in my life said that I was a resident of the city of Philadelphia.
corporation apply to you. If you are a citizen of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Incorporated, which is a private nonprofit corporation, then the statutes of that nonprofit corporation apply to you. If you are a citizen of the United States of America, which is a private nonprofit corporation, then the code of the laws, right, apply to you. But if you are a sovereign of the Moorish Empire, those ordinances, those resolutions, those codes, those statutes do not apply to you.
So basically, and I didn't want to comment on anything seriously because this video is just freaking ridiculous. But the Moorish Empire geographically doesn't exist within the borders of the United States, except for the Moroccan embassy, maybe, right? The definite, to be a citizen of the United States, it means you're born or naturalized within the United States. The U.S. government, your state governments, your local municipalities have jurisdiction over you or the circumstance relative to, law, based on your geography, right? The reason why countries go to war or the reason why countries sign treaties is so they can control the geographical borders of the lands that they oversee. Okay, that's probably the only serious thing I think I'm going to hopefully say for the rest of this video.
Because you are not a member of the corporate
stupid.
ward state. It's as simple as that. And they understand the difference. This is why on their documents, they use words of art. They use the word label. They use the word person. They use the word address. All of these things that place you in their jurisdiction, and you unknowingly fill out forms every day. And every time you fill out a form, you enter into a contract. I don't care what kind of form it is. It's a contract. A driver's license application is a contract. A Social Security application is a contract. When you call up the telephone company and you make a verbal contract over the telephone, this is why they can bill you.
When you make a verbal contract, it's a contract.
When you fill out a voter registration form, it is a contract. Does everybody understand that? Don't ever think anything that you put your signature on becomes a contract. All right? Now, the fact that you are not in your sovereign status means that you make a contract as a minor. They don't care. They know you are a minor. Because, and to be other than a minor, you have to be in your proper person at law. And how we write that is this. Can I have a transparent?
Just a heads up, the second half of this gets a little quiet. We're not quite at the second half, but anyway, it's just a whole bunch more bullshit. But let's just keep listening to the bullshit. She's gonna write bullshit now.
That's working. Can you bear with me for a minute and let me put this on? Because
Plus, how did they pick Morocco? Peace and friendship treaty, maybe?
can y'all see that? Impropria persona. Impropria persona. When you are in your corporate ward status, you look like this to the court.
Pro se.
Pro se. Pro se meaning they get you in the court and they bring someone in called a got that?
Prosecutor.
A prosecutor, because you're in a corporate board status.
Pro se, okay. No, self-representation. Pro se. You're self-representing. Whatever.
Now, if you're in propria persona, say in their criminal allegations, the prosecutor cannot come into the courtroom and say anything to you because you're not in pro se status. Makes sense, right? The issues of law are threefold. The issues of law are status, jurisdiction, and adjudication. The first thing that happens when you walk into a courtroom in your corporate ward status is that they already make the assumption that you are a ward of the state and that you don't know any better. So they immediately start adjudicating you. As the first thing that happens when we walk into a courtroom is that we place our status on the record. On the record. We come in with our flag. We come in with our treaty. We come in with the Constitution we signed with them, and understanding that the Constitution is a contract. It's a contract between who? It's a contract.
And then they put a big old fat guilty stamp on your paperwork because none of this shit works in court.
Between the United States Republic and the United States of America. But there are certain clauses in that contract that apply to Moors, which takes us back to the Treaty of 1787. But that contract between the United States and the United States of America does not apply to us other than that part that discusses the treaty. So it's not relevant for us to go into any courtroom and argue about their ordinances, their codes, their statutes. The only thing we're in there to talk about is, have we violated the treaty? Have we violated that part, which is Article 6 of the Constitution, that applies to us? That's the only question in the courtroom. Because the status of the individuals looks like this.
I can't read it either. I think it's a status. She'll say it.
You and the judge. There's nobody else that you need to discuss anything with in the courtroom besides the judge. The prosecutor is invisible to you. Now, what do you have to say to that judge? My honor, not your honor.
Oh, that's the worst when they say my honor.
What is your name? What is your nationality? All right? And do not let them get away with saying, I am a U.S. citizen. You cannot be a citizen and sit a bench. You cannot be a member of the Bar Association, which is a private, nonprofit corporation that issues registration numbers to its members who do not have a license to practice law in any state. Because in order to have a license to practice law, you must have your proper person. And in order to be in propria persona in this country, whether that be North America, Central America, or South America, you must be a Moor. If they want to be sovereign, they've got to go home. They cannot be sovereign here. All right?
So dumb. This is so dumb.
The next issue
People
of
actually
law
go buy into this
is
shit.
jurisdiction. Now, let me stick with status. What is the status of the prosecutor? What is the status of the district attorney? What is the status of Lynn Abraham? Does anybody in this room know her nationality?
Doesn't matter.
I
If she was
don't.
born or naturalized in the U.S.
That's an important question to ask her if she serves me with any papers. Who are you? Where is your license to practice law? Where is your proof of naturalization in my land? Who gave you the authority to be here? Right? Who issued you authority to act in any capacity, to file any complaint or any charges against anyone? That's the question. And I say to you, she can't answer those questions. Right? So then, if you walk into a courtroom and nobody else has the status to be there, automatically challenge the jurisdiction of the court. There's nothing else that you need to say. There's nothing else to be said. Stand mute. Let them proceed, because guess what? They cannot proceed.
But they will proceed, and if you just want to, stand and say nothing, but also represent yourself, you'll end up with a guilty verdict and whatever the consequences to follow.
you have a question after this one.
How do we make them honor that information that you just passed on to us?
In the courtroom, as I have learned because I've spent a lot of time there, right? There is a language of silence. After you've said what you need to say, don't say any more. They will do the rest when you stand on your square. That's all you need to do. There's no need to stand there and argue with the judge, and trust me, I've done that. All right? And once you say what you need to say, they know everything else to do. But understand, they do not want you exposing the truth to their corporate wards, because every slave that you take out of their corporation, they lose money. This is making business. So don't go into the courtroom trying to expose the fraud. That's not your job. That's not why you're there. There's another venue for that. In that courtroom, because understand it's not court, because it's not law. And I'm going to get into that in a few minutes. So don't try to challenge them on the law. They already know that. They already know they don't have the proper status. They already know they're operating in your land fraudulently. All right? Just say what you have to say and back off. They will give you the window. And it's up to you. If you're educated enough about the law, you'll see the window, you'll recognize it, and then you'll be able to walk through it and walk out the door. But if you're not conscious, when they open the window for you, I'll give you an example, as I gave in class just a few nights ago. Went into the courtroom, and the judge has papers there in front of me, and he's just arguing with me. Young lady, you'd better come back here. I'm going to send all these officers I have at my disposal with guns to hunt you down and bring you. And he's just running his mouth. And the prosecutor slides me the paper to sign, and it was blank. Do you understand? Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
So I signed the paper because I know how to sign contracts and not be obligated to them, right? So I did that, signed the blank piece of paper. They took a copy, I took a copy, and I left. And I never heard from them again. But if I had stood there, as I shared with class, and I have done this paper is blank, and I'm not signing it, and right? So all I had to do was come into the courtroom and say what I had to say. Now, I know how to present myself in the courtroom, Islam, right? And
I mean, if that story is true, that's insane. I don't really believe her, and I've got a feeling the reason she spends so much time in court is because that typically doesn't happen. But I know that prosecutors get so irritated with sovereign citizens that they will often drop cases. Sovereign citizens will hang them up in court for years over a simple traffic ticket. So they drop some of them, but not guilty doesn't happen.
see the window and walk out.
Thank you.
All right. Now, the next issue at law is jurisdiction. We already know they don't have the status. Now, do they have the jurisdiction? The answer is no. Because in order to have jurisdiction, you must first prove status. Everybody in the courtroom must have status on the record. Why is that so important? Because unless their status is on the record, what country do you represent? Says what law you're here to get justice on, right? Now, if you have not clarified the status for the record, you can't bring your law into the court. So there can be no court. So status is very important. And so if you're Moore, and let's say somebody else is Manchurian, and I'll get to that in a minute, when you have two people of different standings in the courtroom, you have to decide what law applies. Is there a treaty between the two? Do they have a constitution? Do they have any other trade agreement or contract that binds them and obligates the parties? That's the question. All right? So, if you walk into the courtroom and they immediately start adjudicating, you have no idea what law they're using.
Oh, it's almost irritating to listen to this. If I go to China and I break a law in China, I'm going to get charged and prosecuted according to Chinese law. If I go to Canada, same thing, right? It doesn't matter. Even if we have a treaty, the treaty is usually treaties say that you have to abide by the other country's laws when you go into those countries. if they say anything at all on the topic.
using. And I guarantee you, because status has not been established for the record, they're not using any law that applies to you. And they're not using any law that applies to them. They're simply using corporate policy, which is discretionary. If they like you today, they'll let you off. If they don't like you tomorrow, they'll give you some time or a fine. Okay? So status and then jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is going to determine what area, what geographical area encompasses the authority that that judge or that court has. All right? So if you're in a municipal court or a court of common pleas, don't go in there talking about the Constitution because they don't have jurisdiction to discuss the Constitution with you. Do not go into a state court discussing the Constitution unless it's the state's Constitution, because the United States' Constitution they have no jurisdiction over, but they won't tell you that. They'll dismiss the case. Different jurisdiction.
They don't need to have jurisdiction over the federal Constitution. The federal Constitution gives the state jurisdiction through the 10th Amendment. Okay, I said another serious thing, but still going.
And don't go into federal court talking about city ordinances. You understand the difference? Okay, jurisdiction. Then adjudication. Once you get to the part about adjudication, you have to ask the question, do you understand the law that applies to you, that applies to this matter? Because there's two types of jurisdiction, jurisdiction over the matter and jurisdiction over the person. All right? Does the court have both? They must have both in order to proceed. They don't tell you these things, but this is very important. So if the court has gotten to the point...
That's the first thing she said correct this whole time. I thought for sure she was going to say maritime and admiralty or whatever. She's correct. There's subject matter jurisdiction and there's physical jurisdiction. She got something right. Okay. 28 seconds into part left in this this first part of the series.
Point of adjudication, all right, which for me, I don't have that problem. But once the court gets to the point of adjudication, then they're ready to start prosecuting. They're ready to find you guilty of something, some kind of way. And the reason for that is because it's a business. And once you enter there and they seize jurisdiction over you, they adjudicate for the sole purpose of getting some money. That's that, and that in fact this is.
Okay, there you have it. That was what, 18, 19 minutes of just ridiculousness. Anyway, there's the mores, right? There's more on this lady. I have to finish her speech. I have to. So she'll, I don't know if I'm gonna do a one or two more parts. I'll try to fit it in one, but I'm gonna do it live, so the lives are typically longer. Anyway, Sovereign Citizen 101 Part 1, the mores. If you're new to Sovereign Citizens and you're just discovering this video, drop a comment, and then I will guide you to some more comprehensive views of Sovereign Citizens, and then we'll kind of cover what they are and what they do and why they're freaking ridiculous over time. Anyway, you guys are awesome. Read the description of the video. I'm sure I put something in there that helps me personally, or something else that helps you. By the way, I do have a goal. I think it's 500 subs by the end of, it's either October or November, and then my wife will tase me live on YouTube. The tube of Yube. All right, cool. You guys, I'll see you on the next one. I don't think it's going to be tomorrow. Maybe most likely Monday. Maybe tomorrow. I have to do a lot of driving tomorrow, so we'll see. Where's my stop recording button? There it is.